I like tea. Hi there, Luke from the Broken Meeple, and yes, I do have a rather extensive tea collection, don't I? You should see my desk at work. I've got green and herbal teas up the wazoo. You know, depending on what ailment or what state of mind I'm in, I seem to have a tea for it. I need caffeine, green tea. I need to sleep, I got sleep tea. I need a digestive problem, mint tea. I need to wake up in the morning without caffeine, ginger. You know, you name it, I've got something for it. I love tea. So to have an expansion come out for a game that I certainly enjoy, that was themed around tea, certainly does get a plus point from me. And we're talking today about Tea and Trade. This is an expansion for Fields of Arle. Fields of Arle is what I like to call Uwe Rosenberg's greatest hit in a board game. If you thought that he was going a little bit over the top with things like Agricola or Caverna, then you've seen nothing yet. Fields of Arle is a sandbox-style Euro game which takes a lot of concepts that Uwe Rosenberg has already put into a lot of his other Euros, shoves it all into this huge package, and gets you to basically do what you feel like. It is a point salad beyond belief. You are essentially, the history kind of behind it. You're in an area of Germany. You are building up your farmland. You are pushing the tidal flats back, like dehydrating your moors so that you can get fields, grain, flax fields, raise animals, build buildings, get ditches. You name it, you can do anything in this game. That wasn't even everything. Oh yes, you can get wood and clay and turn it into timber and brick. You can upgrade your tools like your ovens, your axes, your spades, that kind of thing. You can get leather and wool and linen and turn that into clothing. You can get vehicles and trade with neighboring towns. There is so much you can do in Fields of Arle. It is ridiculous, and it has been fighting against Caverna for being one of my favorite Uwe Rosenberg games of all time. I love Caverna. It's still on my shelf, nice and proud there, but Fields of Arle has been close behind it. What's been hindering it though? Mainly the fact that A, it's a bit of a beast to teach and set up because it requires a huge amount of table space and has a fair amount of rules that aren't complex, but there's a lot of them. So it's a bit of a beast to get to the table with another player. And I say another singular because the other problem with Fields of Arle is that it was restricted to 2 players. I've played it far more as a solo game than I have with an opponent. And it's stopped me being able to teach it to a lot of people because I'd be like, me and the missus would like to learn it. Well, do I stay out of the game for 2.5 hours while they play it? Or do I just teach one of them at a time? Or do they just have to, accept that maybe they won't get taught it for a bit? It's a bit of a pain. Not with this expansion, no. What Tea and Trade does is mainly 3 things. Firstly, it introduces a new concept called ditches. I'll get onto those a little bit later. It introduces a new resource called tea, or East Frisian tea, I believe is the pronunciation. Don't quote me on that though. And this tea can be not only used to gain points, but it can be also used to gain extra actions and improve your skills. It's quite neat, we'll get onto that a bit later. And the third thing it does, which is the main reason I actually bought this in the first place, it introduces a third player. Now, normally I'm like, add another player. I don't want to add another player. All the times I've ranted about add a 5th player. Well, yeah, that's pretty true. Actually, I do hate it when most games add an additional player because usually it's not warranted. In this case, though, I disagree. 2 players was quite restricted for the game. A third player, apart from adding to the time length, was welcome. I felt that this one could do with having a third player. Now, saying that, 4 would be overkill. But 3, I think, is a good mix. 3's always been my sweet spot for a lot of Euro games. Question is, does it work in this one? So let's start with one of the weaker aspects of this expansion for me, and that would be the ditches. The ditches are a pretty minor aspect of this game. Essentially, you build them from your tidal dike line down to your fields and that, and essentially what they do is that they have a certain benefit for the square that they surround, essentially, or half surround. You know, 2 ditches adjacent to a square will give it a benefit. They can raise an additional animal, they can plow an extra field when you take the farmer action, or they can dehydrate a moor straight off without having to take another action to do so. It's neat, they work, but I just found this to be a really minor addition. You know, if they didn't have the ditches in this expansion, I would have not noticed, I would have not cared. Unfortunately, it's not modular. So it's not like I can remove it and just use the T aspect. I kind of have to use everything. So it's one of those things that most people will tend to ignore, but they do have uses. It's not that the ditches are wasted. Some buildings will key off them. There are actions that key off them, like you might get some additional, clay and stuff like that, depending on how many ditches you've got. They take a little bit of an investment, but not too much investment. So it's basically another option for how you want to play your game. But I really could have just not bothered with it if it wasn't in the game. I wouldn't have cared. I wouldn't have lost any sleep over it. It's a new addition. It's a new option. Great, but yeah, wasn't that fussed really. So the next best thing would be the free player setup. The free player setup works quite nicely because you think, oh my god, I've got like an hour per player on the time limit. I've got to add another hour for a third player. This is going to take forever. Not quite, because it's very clever in the setup. Firstly, you have all the additional boards, so you've got more buildings to pick from and you've got the additional bits for free players. But part of the board overlaps the original one, and you now only play 7 rounds, 7 half years, instead of 9. So you've cut off a bit of the length already. In addition, with free players, not only do you start with an additional odd resource here and there, you start off with a basic cart, so you can instantly start trading and upgrading resources. And the best thing of all, and I would use this if it was a module all the time. I think this is a brilliant addition, specializations. With free players, you are allowed to pick 2 specializations before the game starts. This can be improving a tool, or it can be acquiring a green building. However, green buildings cost double what they would normally, so you are going to spend for those things. And also, if you upgrade a tool, your opponents get the resources it would normally cost to upgrade the tool. So by the time you're all done and dusted with it, you've got some unique starting stuff that for your particular player. Someone's gone for that tool, you've gone for this tool, I've got this green building, this is my strategy. And you've already kind of given yourself a starting guideline. These are really good though, because additional resources and having those specializations and chopping off 2 turns, 2 whole rounds out of the game length, because I think 9 half there is a bit much, helps to mitigate the extra time in having a third player. I taught 2 complete new players to this game, the full lot with the expansion, and we got the game done in about the 2.5 hour mark. Not bad. I expected this to be 3 hours minimum, but it took about 2.5 hours, maybe slightly longer with the teaching, I forget, but it certainly didn't go near 3 hours, so 2 3/4 tops. With 3 players, that was pretty good going for 2 players who had never seen Fields of Arle before, let alone this expansion. So those changes are welcome, but it also means that now I can play this free player without fearing that, oh my god, it's going to take forever. Although one caveat, it is going to require a big table. If you thought Fields of Arle was a big table hog to begin with, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because now you each have a sort of a wharf board, where you put your fishing boats. You've got the additional boards that free players provides for the extra buildings and that. And you've just got a third player sitting at the table with their big farm board, their vehicle board and everything. The table space that this game requires is ridiculous. You need a huge table. You need one of these Geekerson tables. You need a giant dining table. Do not expect to play this expansion, or this game really, in fact, Fields of Arle, in a pub with a tiny table or an oval table. It's just not going to work, or at least it's not going to be comfortable. So you're going to have to practice a bit of your ergonomic skills in order to get this to kind of work out the best way. It's a nitpick, it's a pain, but if you're playing Fields of Arle, you kind of know about the table space problem anyway. It's just that you're going to have to add a little bit more table space to what you've got. But if you've got a dedicated large gaming table, you should still be fine. So the free player aspect, love it. This now really helps the game to be taught. I can now bring it out more often. If I bring it to a club, it doesn't have to be solo mode anymore because 2 players are kind of hard for me to do. So Solid inclusion there. That's not even the best bit. Best bit though, the tea. Yes, my yummy scrumptious tea, in fact. Yummy. Well, the tea resource in this, it's quite an easy inclusion. Basically, some of the actions that you do with the fishing boats that you can send off to trade can get you tea. It functions similarly to wood and clay and timber and brick, in that they start off being like half a point, perhaps, and upgrade to a point if you make it from tea into East Frisian tea. But that's not the best bit. The best bit is what you can do with that tea. You have three options. Firstly, you can get rid of one normal tea to increase the tool by 1 for an action you're about to take. So even if you haven't upgraded it, you get like a temporary boost, and that could be just what you need in order to get that action, you make the action work. But of course, you're getting rid of half a point to do it. You can get rid of an East Frisian tea, which is worth a whole point, in order to take the action and improve the tool twice for that action. So you can get an even bigger boost. The whole history behind it is that these guys were so hard working that they pretty much lived on tea constantly in order to keep going. In fact, side note, there's a really interesting booklet in here, it's bigger than the rule book, and it's just full of history about how the tea and how Arle worked and everything. It's really quite an interesting read if you're into sort of German history or a bit of geography knowledge. So yeah, give it a read if you want, but for me it's just kind of sitting in the box as storage for the main part. But with the East Frisian tea, you can get rid of 2 of them, 2 whole points, to take an action twice. That's a really cool thing to do, but you gotta time it right. And that's the thing I love about the tea mechanic, because you might get into a position where you start off with a bit of tea and you might get some extra tea and you might be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just go chuck it in willy-nilly because I want to have all these cool boosts. And that's all well and good, but you're giving up points. You're giving up half a point for a 1 boost, you're giving up a whole point for a double boost, you're giving up 2 points for taking an action twice. So you better make certain that you're making good on those extra boosted actions you're doing, because otherwise you might just be hemorrhaging points throughout the game. And that's one thing about Fields of Arle I've always liked. The fact that you're in that kind of, oh, I don't know, I want that building over there, but that's going to cost this and this. That's like 5 points worth of materials to get 8 to 9 points in there. It's a point salad at the end of the day. And you want that cool thing, you want those extra tools, you want that cool building there, that 15-point building, but you know that you've got to give up a lot of stuff for it. Is it worth it? Usually yes, but not necessarily. And sometimes, like in one game I played with this expansion, I thought, yeah, you know what, I'm going to spend the occasional tea packet, but I just want to get lots of tea. So I basically spent the whole game just manifesting a ton of tea in my resources. Yeah, I didn't use it to boost the actions very often, but I certainly had a lot of points from the tea. I can't remember if I won that game or not, but it was certainly entertaining. So I love the way the tea works. And the main way that you get it via the ships work pretty much like vehicles. They just don't go to the neighbouring villages to trade. Well, duh, they can't sail there. Instead, they have 4 different places they can trade, 4 countries, and they've got a weird selection of stuff they give you. Essentially, if you send the ship there and there's nothing in it, the uncovered spaces, if you pay a cost, so some food, some winter wear, that kind of thing, you'll get your ship filled up with all this cool stuff. But it's an interesting difference. You can send it off to India, pay some food, and it fills up with tea. That makes sense. Most of the tea came from India in those days. You can send it off to England with a tea, and you get a winter wear back. You get like a winter coat. Okay, interesting. You could send it off to, is it Norway, or is it, it's Norway or another Scandinavian country, it's one or two. And you can give a winter wear to fill it up with timber. And then there's another one where you can spend 3 grain or flax to fill it up with wood. It's interesting, they're very different bonuses, and you won't use them all the time, but if you've got a trading ship, might come in handy, you've just got that spare coat. It's worth 2.5 points though. Do I really want to cut it down and get some timber? But you know what, I want that building, I'm gonna need some timber, and I need it quick. The fishing boats you got, they can get you extra food, they can also trade as well, so they basically function like vehicles on the water. So it's again, more options, more stuff you can do. And that's essentially how tea and trade works. More options, more things to do on your turn, more ways to spice up your turn, literally, and the ability to add a 3rd player. This expansion is solid. Love it. In fact, I mean, the ditches, like I say, are a minor thing. I could have taken or leave them, and I hate the fact that I'm stuck with them regardless, but oh well, I still use them. I'll try tactics with them every now and again. It's just meh. But the tea and the free player thing just make it so worth it. You know, the ditches are a minor thing, these are good. Fields of Arle was already a 9 for me. With this expansion, I think it's still probably a 9, but it's gone higher up into that 9 category. And originally I said it was fighting Caverna for my favourite Uwe Rosenberg game. It is now hard for me to decide. I cannot decide whether Fields of Arle or Caverna is my favourite Uwe Rosenberg game. It used to be, oh yeah, it's probably Caverna. Now it's neck and neck, and Fields of Arle might even start pipping it, because as great as Caverna is, it's a bit of a sandbox game, I like it, but Fields of Arle feels like even bigger of a sandbox, and I love the upgrading tools. Not enough Euros do this, where you can upgrade a tool to make worker spaces better. I want to see more of that in games. Come on, designers, publishers, do it. But yeah, it's getting to that point. So Tea and Trade was an expansion I was looking forward to. I was very hyped about it. Granted, you know, it isn't the best expansion ever. You know, elements I could have done without, or maybe I would have liked it to be modular. That would have been better, so I could just say, yeah, regardless of our player count, you know, we can use the tea, or we can use the ditches, or both. And I would have liked the specialization mechanic to have featured in the 2-player game as well. You know, you could house rule it in, but you only use that with the free player. I would have liked it to have been in 2-player as well, because I like that additional star. Okay, it might unbalance a few of the points, but they just, you know what you're getting into with that game. Small minor nitpick though. So Tea and Trade for me, solid. Love the expansion. If you are a fan of Fields of Arle, if you have the game and you want to spice up the, you know, what you do in the game, if you want those like ways to, you know, improve your actions, or if you just want that 3rd player, you owe it to yourself to get this. Highly recommend it if you're a fan of Fields of Arle. If you are just starting out, I suggest just get Fields of Arle first, and then practice with that, because it's more rules to learn. And teaching the base game with this straight off the bat is only recommended if you think the players could handle the original one easily. You know, because if you think they're going to struggle with the base game, throwing this in might just be that little bit too overwhelming. So be that as it may, at your discretion. So Tea and Trade, a solid 9 for me on a personal note. You know, I love this expansion. It's going in. The booklet, that's the history booklet that's in here. You know, it's probably going to remain in here. I'll give it a read every now and again, but I'm not that fussed. It's great if you're a history buff though. The main thing is that I'm just going to have to sort out my storage solution with the normal Fields of Arle now, because the basically wooden insert just won't cut it anymore. It's a shame, but that's just the way inserts go. So that's it for another review. I'm going to enjoy some more of this delicious Sleep Easy tea. So regardless of whether it's tea or coffee that you're into, as long as you realise this is only a game, then it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Whatever is your poison. See you on the next episode. Take care.